Alright, the next part's going to be putting an arrow wrap on the end of the shaft. I found a pretty neat little trick that'll really help save you some time and help you get a consistent, even wrap put on. First, I'll just start by getting one wrap off of there and ready to go. I take the wrap, this is obviously a sticky side, and then you just lay it out to the edge of the towel so that you can butt your arrow there and then roll it and you don't get your hands in the way of anything. Then you just take your shaft, and I always like to start, here's that ID mark that we put on our arrows earlier from the spine testing. I always like to start with that facing up, just so that I do every arrow the exact same every time. It's probably being a little more finicky than needs to be, but like I said, you can't hurt if you do everything the same, then it should turn out the same every time. So then you just take, you line it up square, you push down, and then you'll rotate the arrow to make sure it's nice and straight across the shaft. And I'm pretty happy with where that's sitting. Well, actually, I'm going to adjust it just a tad. It was hanging on the knot a little, so we'll start again. Usually I do this a couple times, it seems like, till I get into the groove again. Since it's been a while since I've done them, I'll set this down. And then once I press down the stick to make sure it's not going to wrap. And this one I got the end good, so there was a little wrinkle in there, so I just pull it back till that wrinkle's out. And then I touch it back down to the shaft and let it sit there. Press it down since I know it's going to be good to go. And then I just take, push down on both ends of the arrow, and then I just twist into the towel. The towel puts even pressure all the way around on the wrap, and you'll get a nice, consistent wrap without any wrinkles on it. So I'm going to go through, I'll show you one more real quick so we can get them all ready to be fletched. You'll just pull your wrap off, you'll line it up with the end here. And I use the edge of this towel line to make sure I'm getting it straight every time, so then I can just look at the arrow and line it up with the same lines and ensure that everything's going on straight. Whatever helps you get them straight. I mean, for me, that's what I work. Again, there's that ID mark, going to put it straight up. Touch the arrow down, make sure that it lines up where we want it to, and then you just spin it around the shaft. And a nice even wrap every time. There's no edges or anything overhung. We'll do this last one real quick and we'll move on to the next step. We'll go put them in the jig and put some fletchings on. So again, here's that spine mark. I'll set the arrow even with this on the back, touch it down, make sure it's the same. It's a little warped here, so I'll line this one up. Just like that, then you push down into the towel and just give the arrow a spin, and then it'll stick itself on there. There you are. Now we'll go on to the next step. Hi, another thing I like to do is take and square the end, both ends of the arrow, both the knock end and the insert end. And all I do to do that is I take this arrow squaring device. You can get whichever kind you want. This happens to be the G5. I found it on clearance for 20 bucks and it works great. You just set your arrow in this notch on both ends, slide your arrow up against here, keep pressure against it, and then just give it a twist, and then pull it away. And then it gives you a nice square end all the way around. There's no guessing. And if you get an arrow and only part of it's hitting, but then the rest doesn't, you just keep going until the whole arrow makes contact the whole way around. This one's nice and square, so it's not biting in. I'll do the same thing on this knock end. And just push, set it in the grooves, push in against it. It's a nice and square finish. That'll help ensure that everything square lines up. Your broadhead should spin true when you put them on the arrow that way. Alright, now that we have the arrows squared and we have the wraps put on, next thing I like to do just before I get fletching is to make sure that all my knocks are indexed the exact same. Again, we know that I'm going to want it, right here's that spine indication mark, and I know that this is the heaviest side of the spine, and that's where I'm going to want to put my cock vane. So I'm going to use this knock adjustment tool so I can spin it in there. I'll put it on the end, and I'll just give it a twist until I line up with this dot here so that it's nice and straight across. Looks like I gotta give it a little more, and that should be good right there. As you can see, it lines up perfectly, wants to go right along that shaft, and it's ready to go into the jig. This will ensure that my cock vane starts in the up position. Alright, now we placed our arrow in the jig, getting ready to go. Again, right here you can see that spine indication mark, making sure that it's going to be putting the first fletch directly on top. It's angled out a little ways, but that's because this clamp doesn't sit directly on top like this. It sits off to the side, as you can see over here. I already went ahead and set this jig up. If you have any questions about setting up your jig on how to get an offset or anything, just let me know and I'll be happy to help you with that. But as you can see, we start pretty much with this edge back here on the bottom corner touching the outside of this shaft, and then all the way up here it's touching the outside of this shaft. I try to get as much offset as I can on there. With these 2-inch vanes, it's a little hard to go helical, so I've just found that setting an extreme offset is generally my best bet. Now we'll go ahead and load the fletching into the clamp. You can see that I took the time and I wanted to make sure that they were always the same, so I marked mine with a black pen so that I knew exactly where I was going to put each fletching. So then I just put my fletching in the clamp and I butt this back white piece right up against that line to ensure that it's the same. I make sure it's loaded in there nice, and again, one last time before I put any glue on, I'm going to set it on there, and I'm going to make sure that everything's lined up good and that I can get even contact across the arrow shaft. As you can see there, I'm going to have plenty of offset, and it's not going to be hanging over anywhere. It's not too extreme, so I'm ready to go ahead and put some glue on it. And again, I like to use this Loctite control gel. I think I'm about out, so I don't know if I'll be able to use any in this example, but we'll see. If not, I've got the regular super glue on backup. But with this, all you do is squeeze a bead right down along this base, just like that. You don't want to get too much to where it'll gob out on you, but with this control gel it really doesn't go running anywhere, so you can't get too much without really going excessive on it. Now that I put the gel on, I'm going to I always hold the base to make sure the arrow isn't going anywhere. I push it down in there, then I make sure it clicks onto the magnet first, then I slide it down against this base here, and then I push down onto the arrow with even pressure for about 5 seconds. And now that I know it's going to stick good and tight, I will just go ahead and let this sit for 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the next fletch. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and rotate the arrow so we can put the next one on. I open the clamp up before I start pulling away, then I pull it out away from the base. You can see the feather stuck nice. There's not any excess glue hanging around, so I'm happy with the way that one turned out. Some guys rotate it while it's in there. I personally slide the arrow out, I turn my base, then I turn the arrow and slide it back in to get ready for the next shaft. You can do it however you want, but I found that's easiest for me, then I'm not banging anything around. Again, I give mine about 5 minutes to ensure that they dry. So again, I push it in there, slide up against the back, make sure that it's going to be even every time. And then we'll put our glue on, we'll slap it down, we'll wait the 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and do the next one. Again, I make sure it's on the magnet first, I slide it back here, and then I slide it down into the arrow to make sure that I get a consistent fit each time. Now that it's bit, I'll just walk away from it and let it sit its 5 minutes and cure. Alright, we'll go ahead and again open the clamp up, then pull it out. Make sure you don't pull your fletching off. Again, I slide mine out, I give my base the rotation, then I slip it back in there. Again, line up the base against here. Oops. Now that it's right against there, ready to put glue on it. You can see a nice thin bead across there. There's A little spot I missed here and there. You just kind of smooth it out. But you never want to go too excessive with the glue, it'll stick. You go too much and you start getting things sticking together, it's messy. Again, slap it against the magnet, slide it against the back, hold your arrow still, then down into the arrow. Push it tight for its 3 to 5 seconds. Now you're good to go. It's super glue, it probably bonds quicker than that in the first 10 seconds. I'm sure it's ready to go, but I always like to let mine sit for the 5 minutes so I know I'm not going to bump anything off and have to refletch one. Generally with wraps, if you get a bunch of glue on there where you're trying to stick, it's never going to stick again, so you got to rip the glue off, or rip the whole fletching off and then go back and do it again. So now I'm gonna be brave here and I'll go ahead and pull this one off right away. I'll move the clamp. See, it's stuck and in place. I just wouldn't go abusing the arrow. I'll set it off to the side. One last thing I like to do with the arrows, just unscrew your cap, and then at the base of each arrow on the front and back, just put another little drop of glue to help make sure it sticks good and tight on that leading edge. Don't go crazy with it, but just put a little extra there to help hold. You don't want to get too messy and then ruin your good clean fletchings. This is where that gel really comes into its own. You can make a nice little blob there and it's not going to run on you, whereas with the liquid you got to be real careful on how you do that, otherwise you'll generally get a runner. Now this arrow's fletched and ready to go. I just got to put my head in. I will go set this against a wall and let it dry completely. I generally don't shoot an arrow for the first 24 hours. I make sure everything's set up. Again, it's super glue and it sets super fast, but I'm a little bit of a worrywart. I always do things overkill to ensure perfection. So I'll go ahead and fletch up the rest of these and then we'll go shoot them and tune a bow next. Alright, now that you've seen how to build consistency into an arrow, it's time to get out there and shoot something. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions about my personal step-by-step process on how to fletch an arrow, feel free to shoot me a message or anything, and I'll be more than happy to walk you through it or answer any questions you have. If you don't want to take the time to do all that, I completely understand. There are some very good arrow builders out there that do the same steps I just showed you, but this is a way that you can do it yourself, and I find it much more rewarding and you can get the exact look you want. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any other suggestions or other videos you'd like to see Red Feather Archery make, just let us know. Thanks.